and welcome back to Coaching with the Bible, Season 2. We're back, this time beginning again the book of Genesis. Before we begin, I want to just let you know that we're going to try some new things this year. We're going to try some different approaches, new books, new sources, change it up a little bit, try to see and take some risks and see how we can do this differently, better than we did it the first year. First year I think was good. I'm very proud of it. I've said it a few times. But there's always things that we can do better and ways that we can improve. Maybe even bring on a guest and have someone talk through a different section, interesting section of the Bible and pull out its lessons. And so thanks for joining me again this time around in Series 2, Season 2. And let's begin. Our topic this week, dealing with disappointment. As much as we talked a lot last year about a lot of different things, I realized in looking back, upon review, that we did a lot of sort of the positive emotions, a lot of the things that we should be doing better in that certain way. And I'll explain a little bit more in just a moment. But on the flip side, there's a lot of things that we really want to avoid, things that we want to get rid of, things that we do that we don't want to do anymore. And we should talk about those things too. It might be more difficult, deeper, more complicated conversation around those subjects, but it's something that we need to work on as well. And the first one I want to tackle this week is disappointment. Or perhaps the deeper question is, how do you handle the downs? How do you handle the moments when it's not going well? So as an example like this, we just came out of the 3-week holiday season, week after week after week, day after day, another thing, another moment, another day, another holiday, another celebration, another prayer service, another festive meal. Boom, boom, consistent for 3+ weeks. Yes, it's exhausting. And yes, it's inspiring. And then it's over. And so the question is, how do you handle the down? After being up there, how do you handle that part after? If you know, like I've talked a lot over the year on occasion about sports and using sports comparisons. So you talk a lot about athletes upon retirement. How are they going to handle the quiet? How are they going to handle being home on a Sunday afternoon when for the last 10 years they were in the NFL playing football on national television in front of 80,000 people and millions of people watching at home? How do they handle the quiet? Or how do they handle the down? And it's such a huge question because we all have them. We all have down moments. This is not even talking about, the serious level of depression or things of that nature. This is simply just being down. Today I'm down. Whatever that reason is, whatever it is. And that always happens, and we have to think about it, and it sort of gets in our head, and we dwell on it, we sit on it, and what do we do with the downs? And we have to appreciate the first thing is that we all have them, and we're always going to have them. So to know that they're a normal part of existence, normal part of life, so we're going to have up moments, we're going to have down moments. Now, we shouldn't ruin the up moments with what we talked briefly once last year about the concept of foreboding joy, where we're not able to really celebrate and be joyful and happy in those moments because we're worried about it going off the rails and being bad. We really have to enjoy the highs, those high moments, those happy moments, those celebratory moments, but at the same time appreciate that the downs are coming. And how do we then deal with the downs? I remember many years ago asking somebody who I stood next to during prayer services in a certain location. I knew that on the high holidays he traveled to Uman to be around the Breslov Hasidim, to be at the gravesite of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, and it now is a huge gathering, but back then it was a much smaller gathering, and he went every year, and it was a very powerful experience. He described it to me once. And then for the second part of the holidays, he was back in this synagogue that was a little less inspiring. And I asked him, how do you do that? And he said you have to prepare for the downs in the same way that you have to prepare for the ups. It's a very powerful idea. And it comes to at us this week in the Bible, because as we turn back to Genesis and those incredible stories at the beginning of the book of Genesis, we have the very famous story of Cain and Abel, brothers. And I want to focus in specifically on the actions of Cain, and not even the part where he goes and he kills Abel. If that was a spoiler, I should have had a spoiler alert right there and warned you in advance. Cain kills Abel. That happens. It's happened every time we've read the book. But really focus in before that action happens on the disappointment that happens right there. So in the 4th chapter of the book of Genesis, Cain and Abel are born. After a period of time in verse 3, it tells us that Cain brings a gift, an offering to God from the fruits of the ground, right? He's a farmer. He works the ground, an agriculturalist early in history. He works the ground. He brings a gift to God. He has innovated the notion, the concept of bringing an offering to God of his own volition, of his own want, of his own desire. It's an incredible innovation. And Abel, as he's called in Hebrew, Hevel, follows suit. He also brings, and he brings from the best of his animals. He is not a farmer. He is a shepherd. He brings them the best. So they both bring gifts to God. It's wonderful. If you're the proud parents, you're very proud of your 2 sons who have done this and innovated this and brought this about. But the verse continues at the end of verse 4 and tells us that God turned and accepted the gift of Abel and Abel himself. And then in verse 5, but to Cain and his gift, God did not turn. God did not accept. And of course, Cain's reaction there is understandable. He is massively disappointed. He's angry and he's upset. And he's frustrated. Maybe he's embarrassed. Maybe he's even ashamed because his wasn't accepted. If Abel is standing right there and they're doing this together in the same space, the same location, and the same altar, you can imagine how small and diminished Cain can feel in that moment. How disappointed he would be. How down he would be in that moment. After what would have felt to be such a high for having innovated this concept, thought of this concept of bringing a gift, going and then bringing from his fruits to God, and then it not happening for him. There's sort of 2 different things that are going on. The verse in verse 5 describes that 1, Cain is angry. That's the first descriptor that's there. And 2, his face falls. It's 2 different things. The anger part is sort of an expectation level and frustration or anger at the expectation not being met. The second one, his face falling, the Netziv, Rabbi Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who we've quoted many times last year in his work, Ha'emek Davar, his commentary on the Bible, says that the idea of his face falling is that perhaps he now has doubts about himself, that he really didn't deserve in the first place for his gift to be accepted, but he was hopeful, and now he's wondering what he's even doing there in the first place. It's a very descriptive verse, a very powerful verse of disappointment, of a down moment in the life of Cain. Now, his reaction is ultimately, the verses continue, and we know the rest of the story, that he and Abel have a conversation, one we don't know exactly the details of, and then he kills him, and then God turns to him and punishes him. And so we have to sort of appreciate in the moment that what Cain did, in terms of killing his brother, is obviously not acceptable and is not warranted. But before we get there, can we split the story for just a minute and focus in on the moment of his disappointment? Because I think we've all been there. We've all experienced it. We've all suffered through it. And it's hard when that stuff happens to us. When we get knocked down like that, can appreciate the disappointment that ensues and that follows. And to sort of appreciate the idea here is a quote that I saw from I think from Muhammad Ali, who got knocked down a few times in his life, certainly. And he said the following. He said that getting knocked down doesn't make you a loser. You don't lose if you get knocked down. He said you lose if you stay down. So getting knocked down, getting knocked off your perch, getting that sense of disappointment, of failure, which we talked about last year, being on the ground, is only ultimately a problem if we stay on the ground, if we stay knocked down, if we allow being knocked down to persist, if we allow the disappointment to stay with us and extend beyond even that immediate moment. And so we don't lose if we get knocked down, we lose if we stay down. And as the other famous philosopher of the 70s, 80s, 90s, and today, Rocky Balboa, had said, and also I think a really wonderful quote, and I'm going to quote it the way he said it because I'm not sure how else to do it. I think it would be inappropriate to do it otherwise. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. You're going to get hit. We're all going to get hit. We all get hit. It's just a question of how well we take the hits, what happens to us when we get knocked down, and then how we get up. And as long as we don't stay down. And so in the case of Cain, Cain's reaction beyond being angry and upset or even shamed and embarrassed is that he then goes and he kills his brother. No one's condoning that. No one's accepting that that is the right way to go about this. It's certainly not. The conversation that ensues with God before he kills his brother is God says, why are you so upset? Why are you so disappointed? Don't you appreciate that if you had done better, then it would have been accepted, that you could do better? It's a super important point. I forget which source I saw it in, which commentary I saw it in. God's response to Cain isn't soft and it isn't easy to accept either. It's not where God is applauding him for the effort or giving him a trophy for having brought a sacrifice and offering at all. It's God saying, the innovation was a terrific, wonderful innovation. Your brother learned an amazing lesson from it and he brought the best that he had. You too could do better. You too have an opportunity to do it better. And as I saw in the source from Rabbi Yosef Salant, the Be'er Yosef, who again we quoted many times, saying the following, is that if it's not going to be better, it's going to be worse. There's no middle ground. There's no staying flat. There's no sense that it's always going to be some sort of a plateau. That's not the way life works. So Cain, you can innovate this, but innovate to the hilt. Go to the full end of it and bring the full experience of the offering to God. Because if you don't, it's going to slide backwards. It's going to be, you're going to stay down, but it's going to be worse than simply staying down. You're going to keep getting knocked down. You're going to keep being underfoot. You're going to keep being disappointed. And so life always moves up or it moves down. It never stays flat. And so we have to appreciate that sense. So leaving out the notion of what happens afterward, again, not an appropriate response killing his brother, but the sense there in the middle of Cain appreciating what he did right and Cain appreciating what he did wrong. Because the notion of disappointment is something that we all have experienced, as I mentioned, and at the root of disappointment is really a few things. There's sort of this idea of expectations. We have an expectation. Cain had an expectation that God would accept this offering, and by virtue of God not accepting, his expectation wasn't met, he's disappointed. Disappointment, I read in an article on a website called betterup.com, terrific website, betterup.com. Disappointment equals expectation divided by reality. So expectation over reality. Expectation versus reality will then measure out towards what the level of disappointment is. But really, disappointment, in that article, they said disappointment isn't a definition. It's not a defining term of a person. It's a data point. It tells you something about yourself. If you are disappointed in a moment, that means that you wanted something to happen. You were passionate about something happening. You have made an effort towards something occurring, a result, whatever that is, and you're disappointed because your expectation wasn't met. Now we can learn from it, we can grow from it, we can improve on it. And that's part two. It's a data point because you grow through it. Talked a lot last year about the idea of stepping back, reviewing, looking at our actions, looking at our inputs, looking at what we did or didn't do. You grow through the disappointment. And as the other famous philosopher of the 2000s, Kanye West, said, if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger. In the same way, disappointment can make you stronger. Instead of simply seeing it only as disappointment, seeing it as adversity, the things that knock you down are adversity, and then you get up. As the verse in Proverbs says, you get knocked down 7 times. The righteous gets knocked down 7 times. Then he gets up. Because you get knocked down 7 times, you get up 8. That makes you righteous. It's a song that I heard a lot over the last month plus, which is exactly on that point. It's a song by a singer named Joey Newcomb. And he has this song. It's called "You Fall Down, You Get Back Up," and I've listened to it a lot over the weeks of the high holiday season. Fall down, get back up. Fall down, get back up, because that's really what we're going through. That is the human experience. That is what we are. We should appreciate that's going to happen in life. You fall down, you get back up. There is no giving up in this world. And so then, what do we do with it? When we're disappointed, when we get knocked down, when that happens to us. So the first thing to deal with it is you feel it. Feel it, let it be felt in your entire being. Feel the disappointment, live in the disappointment, but don't let it fester. I used to say with certain disappointments would come my way, we get a day. You get one day to be angry, to be upset, to be disappointed. You can let it fester for 24 hours. And then after that, it's gone. You move on. Take your wounds, you lick your wounds, you learn your lessons. You get some perspective. But we don't allow it to derail us. Because we know what we know inside. We know that we're disappointed because we had an expectation, and perhaps our inputs didn't meet our outputs, and perhaps we need to do more, and we can learn more, we can grow more, as we said. But we can't let it derail us. We can't let it create doubt in our being, because we know that it does. We know that it will. That's what slumps are. When it's an extended period of disappointment, not over one day, where we get knocked down one day and then the next day and then the third day and the fourth day and the fifth day, you're in a slump. Slumps are hard. We have slumps. We have to go back to basics. Go back to what got us here. Get back to what really worked for us. And practice in the space of the things that we do well to get us out of that down, to get us off the ground, to get us back up, to get us back standing, and to have the ability to move the disappointment out, and so that the knocked down sense of us is no longer there. One very simple thing that one can do that's a little less tough than the things that I've talked about before, which I think is really true, is to try to find a way to laugh. I know it sounds ridiculous, but if you have a website where you know there's something funny, for some people it's laughing babies. For some people it's practical jokes. Whatever it is that gets you a little levity, a little light, it's important. Put that in there in the process of you getting out of your disappointments. But appreciate the following thing. I thought this was a really great quote. This is a quote from Les Brown. Les Brown is a motivational speaker. He's very well known. He has some terrific quotes across all of his different presentations. And he said the following: when life knocks you down, try to land on your back. Because if you can look up, you can get up. And let your reason get you back up. That's your why. As we said in the beginning of this, is that in disappointment, there was an expectation that wasn't met. That expectation is your why for having done something. And so let that why get you back off the ground. But even more so, getting up off the ground, not staying down, is laudatory and praiseworthy, because it means that you believe in something enough to get up off the ground and try it again. To get up off the ground and to make another go at it. And maybe it's the 8th time, right? The verse says get knocked down 7 times. The 8th time is the one that you need to get through the wall. It's the 101st time that is what you need to get through the wall. The verse says, and this is quoted in the song, the verse says that the righteous get knocked down 7 times and get up. What about that makes you righteous? So in the song, the singer, Joey Newcomb, quotes, I didn't see the quote inside, but the notion that the righteous person is the one who knows he's going to get knocked down, but he's always the one who always gets back up. That it's not simply you're righteous because you do wonderful things in life and you're always doing terrific acts and good deeds and all kinds of things like that. You're righteous because you move forward. You're righteous because you persist. You're righteous because you don't let the adversities stand in your way. You don't let the bottlenecks block you. It's because you don't let the disappointments hold you back and hold you down and keep you down. It's that you fight through and you work through and you go through and you improve and you do better and you try harder and you look for other ways to complete that success. And with that, we have begun season 2 of Coaching with the Bible. The topic this week: getting up from the downs, getting over the downs, and getting through disappointment. See you next week.
Down, you get back up, you fall.